Good morning, magical humans everywhere. It is I, Maggie Rose Cunningham, here for another edition of Magic in Mind, and today we are going to be looking at tempting fate, and specifically working with your personal Nornir as distinct from the Nornir with a capital N, Urt, Varthandi, and Skuld, who many of you may have heard of already. Urt, Varthandi and Skuld are the keepers of the past for Urt, the present for Varthandi, and the future, or that which must be, for Skuld. It's not as simple as sort of saying that the future's there and we're about to walk into it. So we have our big Nornir, and then we have the little Nornir, who I distinguish I think of it the most capital N Nornir for the big three, and small n Nornir for our personal Nornir. So we're going to be looking at working with them, and I can see people arriving. Oh, it's your birthday, Suki! Happy birthday! How lovely! And so apt, because one of the things that we know about the Nornir from the very little that has been passed down through the text to us is that our personal Nornir was said to assemble with us around our mother when we were born, to gift us our fate, good, bad, indifferent, we shall see. Which leads me on to a question I've got for those of you as you start to come in, or you're joining me for the replay. The question from me is: do you think of, when I say fate, do you think of fate as being a positive force, a neutral force, or a negative force? So have a little play with that, and have a sip on my tea while you're considering this question. It might be that it's come up at different times in your life, and that sometimes you're like, yes, wow, this is amazing, and other times you're going, really? No. So, what is it for you now? Or what if you step back and you feel like, okay, when I think about fate, positive, neutral, or negative? Because I think that this is important for us when we consider the role of our own personal Nornir. So as I've said, we know that they are said to gather around the mother when a child is born. We have the story of Helgi, of the hero Helgi, and of the Nornir travelling across the land and then coming and fixing golden threads across the vault of the moon or the sky to fix his destiny, to fix his fate. This is one of the huge inspirations for me as to why I moved into runic astrology, into birth runes specifically. And the Nornirs, they are very present for me in my birth runes work. I'm going to talk a little bit about that at the end, but the main thing that we're looking at today is about starting a practice working with your Nornir. Good morning, Maggie. So, you're all being very quiet there in the chat. So yes, is fate for you a positive force, a neutral force, or a negative force in the way that you conceptualize it? Or is it something entirely different? Happy for it to be, thank you, Lisa. Neutral but mutable. I like that. Yes. That sense that it can move and change and flex. And I sort of think that that's why the Nornir are there with us. Now, I want to suggest that there are two key pieces for us when we consider working with our personal Nornir, and the role that they might play in fate, and as messengers of fate, or as weavers of fate, or as gifters of fate. And one of those, for me, is around the way in which we're born into the world. We're born into the world as part of a pre-existing family, land, community, and that there will be ancestral, you might think about them as ancestral debts. If you think about Skuld, she can often mean that which is debted, which is passed forward through the generations. So we simply pick things up, based on, doesn't have to just be genetic, just to be really clear. There can be genetics, and there's some really interesting studies and books out there which I love. There's one called It Didn't Start With You, which I adore, which looks at the sort of genetics of fate in many ways. We can also think about it as being entanglement, almost like ancestral entanglement, that we are born and we might feel ourselves as being we're in the web of weird. So when we're woven into the tapestry, we become entangled. And interestingly, Skuld, the big Norn Skuld, often comes and says to me, she says, I'm not just there to cut the threads at the end of lives, as often people see her with a knife and they see her cutting the threads. I also help to untangle those moments. And so there's possibility that we are born and we are simply entangled. There's also a possibility that we chose. We said, I might be somebody who can help with that untangling process. Perhaps that sounded fun at the time before you came into this incarnation. You're like, yeah, I can definitely do that. That'd be brilliant. And then you're born and you forget that you made that particular promise and you go, oh, now why is all this stuff? So again, I'd love to hear from you. If you're somebody who feels like, there's stuff in my life that just keeps coming up and it doesn't feel like it originated with me. There's no reason why these things should have happened, and maybe it's repeating. Maybe there are repeating patterns. Perhaps you've done some work and you've gone, someone's gone and they said, it all starts in childhood, and you go back to your childhood and you go, well, there was this thing, and maybe, but it doesn't feel like really oomphy and weighty. It doesn't feel like it could be the full causal reason why now I'm repeating a cycle of misery over and over again. It's possible that that's because the energy that is drawing you into these patterns isn't yours, it's ancestral. This is one of the things that the Nornir help us with, is that clearing and that cleansing, but not just clearing and cleansing, also remembering and holding the experience of the past. And I think this is important. I'm going to try and remember to come back to this, because I do think this is important, that it's not just about saying, okay, releasing and letting go of and all the bad things, and we're travelling towards just the good, and we will have reached the pinnacle of everything when we can be in a purely ecstatic state and we will have left everything else behind. I think that's one of the things that to a certain extent differentiates the Northern tradition from some other spiritual traditions. And I know that all spiritual traditions take us very deep to a point where there is a unity of experience, where we almost feel the ecstasy of being regardless of the individual experiences that we've had through that. But I think in particular the Northern tradition teaches us to embrace and learn from and grow strong from the experiences that we have had that have been very challenging in our lives. And I believe that that's also the case, that we are intended to learn from and grow strong from the experiences that our ancestors have had in the past. It's one of the reasons why the sagas were important, why for the Vikings, and I think some of the others, Anglo-Saxons I would say as well, it's just this idea of writing story, of recording story. We have the Scops, similar to bards or skalds, who one of the things that they were charged with doing was passing on story. And they weren't just stories of valour, sometimes they were also teaching stories. So there is a need for us to embrace the fullness of experience, and that the Nornir offer. And the other thing I think that they offer that is very important is a finding and fulfilling of purpose. So tell me, those of you who are here, how many of you would like to find or maybe connect even more strongly with your purpose in this lifetime? You're like, yeah, that would be great if I was like, this is why I am here. I happen to think that if you get to that point and you go, this is why I am here, then the Nornir go, oh, look, they're ready for something else. They found that bit. Let's give them something else as well. That's my personal view. But that moment where you go, oh, I feel as if I'm doing something in my life that makes me feel fulfilled. It makes me feel like it's worthwhile. So he says, yes, we want that. So I think that the Nornir do both of these things. Now, let's talk a little bit more about the Nornir and how we can distinguish them and how we know who they are and what they do. So I want to bring in, at this point, 4 groups of feminine guiding or guardian spirits who we might work with as pursuers, as seekers of the Northern tradition. So we've got the entanglers. Do not worry about the spellings at this point. If you really want to know the spellings, pop something in the chat box and we will pop them in there for you. The entanglers, who are the feminine collective body of the Aesir. So the Aesir are the sky gods. Asa means god. They're the gods of Asgard, is where they live. Up high on the world tree. Odin is their leader. Frigg and Odin share the throne, and Frigg is the leader of the entanglers. It's one of the pieces around the divine feminine in particular that draws us into deeper collaboration, and the entanglers teach us that. They're in many ways teachers. So they are teachers, but it is worth bearing in mind in terms of the Nornir that Frigg is also said to spin the threads that the Nornir then use. Sometimes she's said to draw them from the clouds, to spin these threads, which I always find really interesting if you think about the Well of Weird being made of water, and then it rises up, and then the dew is said to gather on the limbs of the world tree and flow down the world tree, but then obviously it also becomes water vapour, it becomes the clouds, and then Frigg spins this. And there is I think an important piece here when we're thinking about fate, around when we can be intentional. I draw this substance from the sky and I spin it into these threads and I weave it in, and when it's more flowing and we don't necessarily have control over the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune. We have to ride that tide, and that's the water that's coming down, and that's a healing water. That's a calling into a wholeness that perhaps we can't feel. So, we will do our best to be intentional and conscious in our pursuit of our best selves in the world, but we can't see as far ahead as the Nornir. This is one of the things that they do for us, is that they connect us strongly to possibilities that we cannot yet touch. I think that's an important piece as well. So that Frigg does have a connection to the Nornir, sort of shared function. Then we have the Disir. Dis means a woman or lady. If we take it all the way back to its sort of origins, it can mean nurturer or suckler. It can call on the energy of Ordhumla, the primal cow mother who nurtured all beings indiscriminately. Freya is often referred to as Vanadis, which means like Lady of the Vanir, but it's that sort of recognition that she is a member of the Disir. And the Disir are, all people are said to have Disir. So we've got our personal Nornir. We might have like a patron amongst the entanglers, one or two that we work with. We have our Nornir who come when we're born, and maybe when there are other gateway moments in our lives, and they say, go that way, or here, I gift you a new purpose, or a new challenge to work through, or a new set of entanglements that your ancestors could really do with you working through at this point. And I know it's not going to be that fun, but you're the person to do it. Those sorts of things, they can come back at these points. But the Disir are very protective and nurturing and loving and supportive. It's a little bit like if you could choose all the best bits of the people who've embodied feminine energy. They don't have to be women. There are plenty of men out there who embody the energy of the Disir with grace and magnificence, that make you feel loved and safe and supported and nurtured and held, where it's good and more than good to be vulnerable and to receive. All of these things. This is the role of the Disir. They can be ancestral spirits. They can be deities that we've worked with. They can be power animals people have had as well. They can be tree spirits, I think, as well. Anything that has a consciousness in the broadest possible sense that resonates with this collective, collaborative, nurturing, suckling energy, and that is connected to you, can be a member of your Disir circle. Human beings can be members of your Disir circle as well. Can be there, or can act in that capacity for short periods of time. I was about to go off on I don't know, I'm going to go off very briefly for a moment. I went to Wales this weekend I'm doing some training, embodiment training at the moment, and a lot of that, not all of it, a lot of that has been around receiving from the divine feminine, but not receiving from the divine feminine in terms of out there, but receiving from the divine feminine with the person who's standing in front of me, or the person who is holding me, in a way that some of us may never have experienced that tenderness of touch, before in our lifetimes, and that we need so much. It's perfectly possible for a human person to embody the energy of the Disir for you in any particular moment. So they're incredibly important. And you'll notice as we say, okay, we've got the entanglers as teachers and we've got the Disir as nurturers. If we want to move forward and heal and become unentangled and, you know, have challenging experiences that draw us into purpose, then we're going to need the support of the Disir, you know, and need that support. I love Wales too, Erica. Did you live there for 3 years? Oh, lovely. I'll tell you a secret. Don't tell anybody else this. I was conceived in Wales. I'm reliably informed by my parents who went on holiday and it rained the whole time. Otherwise I wouldn't even be here. If they'd gone somewhere else and they'd been out touring, doing all of the trips that they'd planned rather than staying in a cottage for the entire time, wouldn't even be here. But don't tell anyone else, because, you know, it's an intimate moment, isn't it? Where was I? My mum went to Wales for university as well. I love Wales. I used to visit lots and lots and lots. I haven't been there for a long time, so it felt like a coming home in many ways when I went there and experienced that beautiful energy of feminine together. So we've got our Aesir, we've got our Disir. Let's cover the Nornir now. So I've talked about Urthrothandi and Skål, that which must be. And you can think about your Nornir, like, as I said, as like gifting fate, you know, gifting those good and the bad. We talked, didn't we, about do we experience fate as being a positive or a neutral or a negative force in our lives. Now I want to bring you to mind at this point the story of Sleeping Beauty. And if you remember, Sleeping Beauty has fairy godmothers who come to visit her. And they offer gifts. And I always think that this is a little bit of a sort of romanticised version of the Nornir coming in that moment. Or maybe a collection, maybe the Aesir and the Disir and the Nornir, and we'll talk about the Valkyrie in a moment, coming at this point that this princess in a sort of important person is born into the world, so it's a story that we can tell. And you'll notice that some of these the fairy godmothers gift good things. You know, we're told that they're good things, and then the bad fairy, the wicked fairy, she's not invited, is she? They sort of try and push her away, and she comes and she gifts a terrible destiny. Interestingly, she tries to offer the gift of death. And if we consider for a moment that the Nornir are said to be with us through our lifetimes from the moment of birth until the moment of death, and they will cut our threads, whoever we are, at that point, and death is the time when we will face the judgment of the Nornir. Actually, what the wicked fairy does is she simply says, I'm going to fast forward that death to the point when she's 18 because I'm really annoyed with you right now because you didn't invite me. You can't not invite fate to your party, to your life. Is sort of, I think, one of the messages that comes in. And I suspect, for those of you who've read the, excuse me, I'm going to blow my nose for a moment because I've got a little bit of a cold that I picked up while I was in Wales. Fate, I'm sure. So they offered gifts, and if you look at the gifts in modern fairy tales, it's like beauty and grace and all of these things, and we might look at them now and go a bit like, really? It's a bit shallow, There were some other things, but there was a lot of like princessy gifts, and you sort of think, wow, where was the climbing trees and the living a great and noble life or changing the world or anything like that? They're not in there. So I think it's really important that we're careful in not just sort of saying, okay, those first fairies, they were offering like really, really nice, lovely things, and then the last one, she was like, no, you're going to die. And to be honest, we're all going to die, aren't we? We're all going to die. But we don't all get to be graceful and pretty and all of the things that she was offered. But we might want different things, So I suspect that every Nornir can have the potential to offer us the good or the bad or the indifferent, although we might experience those gifts in different ways through the course of our life. So I'm going to come back to that in a moment. But I want to also now bring in the Valkyries. It's sort of the final group of our feminine spirits here. Now, the Valkyrie is said to not come to everybody necessarily. They will come almost as this, if you seize the day and you do your best and you try to be the hero that you want out there in the world, then the Valkyrie will come, and when the Nornir have cut that last thread, they will scoop you up and they will take you to Valhalla. There's one of the legends there. But I think there is an energy as well around the Valkyrie, which is around stepping into our most heroic selves, and that recognition and that reward that comes through. And Suki says, do you think the Nornir give bad as a lesson to work through? Now, this is interesting, Suki, because because I think of the Nornir as being like impersonal to a certain extent. They would certainly see, I think, things as being, this family, this group, this organisation that a person has become a member of, like this land, whatever it is, has unresolved stuff that needs to be worked through, and we will therefore bring that energy through this person who seems like able and willing or strong enough or gentle enough or whatever it is. Perhaps the good Nornir have gifted them some really cool stuff, and it's like, yes, they can bring that in. So I want to say yes and no, because I don't feel as if they're actually like, you need to learn a specific lesson and then say, I've learned this lesson and I've moved on. I think of it maybe more as a contract, but hold that thought, because I think it's a really important thought. And this is where I absolutely, I'm not right. I don't have a personal audience with the Nornir where they say, Maggie, this is the way that we work and everyone else is wrong. I absolutely do not. So these are questions that you might want to ask your own Nornir as well. But let's come back to that, because I think it's a really good question. To a certain extent, yes, but I think not in the sense of them saying, here's like a shopping list of lessons that Suki has decided that she wants to learn through the course of this lifetime. But you might have come with a purpose, and the events that are around you help you to fulfill that purpose, for example. But let's come back to that. So we've got our fairy godmothers, and they come at the moment of our birth. And as I've mentioned, all gifts can have shadows. So it might be, Suki, if you think about it, when someone's decided, I want to learn, let's look at Sleeping Beauty. So for whatever reason, I've decided I want to learn the lesson of grace. And in order to learn the lesson of grace, you almost can't be born with natural grace, I sort of feel. So when they say to Sleeping Beauty, she's going to have like this grace, if she's just innately got it, then it's just there, isn't it? And she's not going to learn it necessarily. But if you want to understand grace, to be in grace, you need to have worked for it to a certain extent, I almost feel. Does that make sense? It's like, if you're just born and you're like, oh, there and everything, it's in you, but you can't always see it in yourself. So there might be different ways in which we could experience grace. So it might be that you have to work very hard. Maybe you're doing your ballet lessons, or in my case, doing my embodiment lessons. I have dyspraxia, so I can be very, very clumsy, but the embodiment work that I'm doing is helping me to find the rhythms of my own body and to find my own definition of grace, I might say. So you might say, I've come to find my own definition of grace, or I've come to understand grace in some way. This might also be about beauty. There'll be a very big difference between somebody saying, I've come to embody beauty for others. Lots of beautiful people have absolutely no idea that they are beautiful. Or I might have come to offer beauty into the world, in which case you find beauty in what you make or you create. Or I've come to appreciate beauty around me, to connect with beauty. So there might be lots of different ways in which we can unfold the possibilities of the gift. Might be a way of looking at it that way. So I want to suggest some possibilities for things that we might, and again, this is a might, that we might have said, at the moment we're standing there, and perhaps we've got our birth runes, and our birth runes are sort of saying, this way forward, I've got lagus, I'm going to be flowing and receiving, I'm going to feel that energy of water moving through me, and I'm going to have weird initiatory experiences when water comes, all of those things might be resonating with me. But I might also be going, there are things, and I've looked over the family that I'm going to be born into, and I can see places of suffering or pain that I, as a person, would like to help and support as I move through that family, as I work with that family. So you could say, my first example here is that I will release this family pattern. Might be something that you said, I'll release this family pattern. And it might be that you do so through conscious healing work then, without releasing that family pattern. Or it might be that you do work out in the community with people who have suffered from the same things that your family suffered from, and you do that work to support others to find freedom, and that acts as a release process for your family. at the same time. Or it might be that you experience that suffering or challenge very fully in your life, and you do all of the deep work to heal yourself from it, and your family line receives it because of that. There are many different ways in which a commitment can manifest out in the world. It might be, I will experience love without restriction. I really want to experience love without restriction. Now, if you have that as a little energetic gift that you've said, this is what I want to do in the Nornir, like, okay, we'll make that into a gift and we'll offer that to you. That comes through, and you meet, you have a horse that you adore as a child, and you ride the horse and you go out into the wild and this is amazing, we're free, we have no restriction. And then it might be that you find a partner and you feel, you bring that same energy to that partnership, but the other person, they don't. And then you find yourself trapped, and your job is then to release yourself from that, even though you might not want to. You might love that person fully and utterly and go, I'm happy here, but there's a part of my soul that says, no, I can't live with the restrictions that this person feels it's necessary to put on me to make me feel safe. For example, they might say, don't wear such bright clothes, and you might be too visible when you go outside. Or, I don't want you walking out late, even though I know you really enjoy it, and I'm afraid for you, so please don't do that. Those sorts of things. It might not come from a place of desiring to harm you, but it doesn't sit with a core part of your soul, the core commitment that you've made with your soul, and for that reason, you need to be able to either move on in some way or fight for those restrictions to be lifted, which might cause pain to the other person. So it becomes complex then. These things can become complex, and things that seem like very safe gifts might have lots of different ways in which they can come out into the world. I will offer healing to support our planet in getting better, or in our battle in the world against poverty, or all of it. I might offer that in this way, and there's so many different ways in which you could do that as a person. It might not be energy healing, or it might be you become a doctor, it might be you become a charity worker, or that you work in the financial industry and you say, let's be more ethical in our approach. Lots of different ways in which you might bring that through, but the Nornir sort of offer that gift for you. And how about this one? This is my final one I'm going to offer to you. I will expand my understanding of compassion. I will expand my understanding of compassion. And there are so many ways in which the Nornir might work to help you to make sure that you achieve that intention that you set for yourself before you were born. And some of those might be wonderful, beautiful experiences, and some of them might be awful experiences. Now, in order to, if you think about compassion as being suffering with, it might be that you go fully into the suffering of those who you want to feel deep compassion for, in order to have that true and full experience of that. So the intention can be an incredibly powerful, positive one, and yet the journey that you take for that can be a very, very challenging one. So when we are thinking about fate, you remember what I said about there being times when Frigg spins the clouds and she brings it down and she makes it into thread. There might be times when we intentionally weave with our Nornir, and there are lots of different ways in which that can play out in our lives. And there will be times, I personally think still, when the dice of fate are rolled and something gets there, it's there, for whatever reason, humanity needed this, and it happens to have landed on your lap. And I believe that the Nornir do have a role to play, our personal Nornir do have a role to play with that as well. So for those of you who've done your birth runes with me, you'll know I talk about the Nornir's gift, one of your 14 birth runes. And the Nornir's gift is there to call on in times of great need and times of challenge and difficulty. And sometimes it's that, it's so I'm finding this really, really difficult. And then you can call on your Nornir's gift rune, and they will, offer that support for you through that rune. That's my belief, and that's the way that I work with people too. So I think that we can trace thread. We can trace fate, or we can look at those entanglements, or we can look at, yes, this is helping me on my heroic journey. And sometimes we just get something just lands in our laps, and we're like, okay, I can either, I'm going to move through this to the best of my ability, still weaving as I go, still finding that compassion as I go, or still offering that healing as I go, or surviving this, and living through it. And that is also part of fate. And that's why I think that the Nornir's gift rune is there. So I wanted to talk to you about how you might start to work with your personal Nornir, bearing in mind that I've said that they will gather around you at birth. They'll also gather around you at they might come for birthdays, they might come when you move house, they might come during illnesses, they might come when family members die or move away, or when we get married, or when we get divorced, or these gateway moments in life. They will often come at that point, and sometimes they will create gateways for us. Let's say I veered totally off my path and I'm sticking too long in the realm of understanding what it is to not act in compassion with other people. I'm really internalizing that lesson by being the meanest person I possibly can be, and the Nornir are a bit like, right, let's move you on through this particular lesson now, or this particular channel for understanding compassion into the next phase. And I should say that you can call on your Nornir to do that. You can call on them to help you, almost to sort of fast forward through a particular fate, channel for fate that you're moving through. That is a possibility to do that, and to say, I'm ready to do this. Calling my Nornir's gift in, I'm ready to learn this lesson and move on just a little bit faster than you're doing it. And I appreciate that means that everything might fast forward and it might feel like I'm riding a tidal wave, but I'm ready. We can do that. So one of the things that I would suggest that you do in terms of thinking about how do I work with my Nornir, maybe you can do some journaling work or some meditation work. And I've got 3 questions that you can journal or meditate on. So the first one is, where do I feel the Nornir influencing my life right now or in the past? So these are going to be things like these moments where you go, I just know it, I just know that that's the right thing for me now. Or I have things like, I know that this isn't my forever home. I know that. I knew when I moved out and then came back for a period of time that was the right thing to do. I felt the influence of Nornir through that time. Illnesses that I have had, when my children decided that they were going to be born, those sorts of things. I was like, this is Nornir. The time when I went to an audition for the school play and I thought it was for the choir and then it was for the solos, and I had to make the decision in that moment. The Nornir had offered me a gateway into voice magic. I didn't know that then, but that's what they were doing. Because I would never have gone to the solos audition. You must have been mad, And I was there sitting there going, okay, what's going to be worse? What's going to be worse? Do I run out of the room? No, hoping nobody will notice and not being embarrassed, or do I do the song and just hope that no one notices and it all goes, it's just done. I decided that I would stay and I would sing the song, and I got the main part in the school play from that, and it was actually life-changing for me. I realised it was possible for me to open my mouth and speak or sing in front of other people without that being the end of my existence. So there are moments like that. So have a brain dump or a journaling session. I think you can meditate on it, but if you're going to meditate on it, then do the writing afterwards, because you will forget. Just do a little bit. Just track those moments in your life. When I almost drowned in a swimming pool when I was 3, and I didn't. Well, I won't go into that. There's various moments like that, and you go, yeah, those were fated moments. Those were moments that influenced my life in a particular direction. That if I hadn't have had that moment, I wouldn't be on this path right now. I just wouldn't. Second question: what strength have I drawn from their influence in those moments? You could have put wisdom in there, or insight in there. No, but what have I learned about myself? What strength have I learned? So obviously I learned that it was possible for me to sing or speak without just flicking out of existence like that. I learned from my drowning experience that not everyone sees the same things as me. You know, lots of different things that we go, that these are lessons that I couldn't learn by someone telling me them. So that's our second question. What strength have I drawn from their influence? And then the third question is, where am I struggling? Where am I struggling with their influence right now? Where I'm like, oh God, I can really feel, this pull to do this thing, but it's really hard. Or I'm experiencing something that it's a pattern that just keeps on repeating and over and over and over again. And I think that I'm out of it and then I'm not. Or this thing that just doesn't feel like it's mine, but it's come and I'm holding it and it's heavy and it's hard. So I have a little, little journaling with that as your third sentence. I'll put these in the chat box as well for people, so you've got those for your journaling. And then you can start the process of inviting your Nornir in. And the Disir you can create altars for. They love altars. They love little places. The Nornir, they would, I think they'd be okay with that. They would like that. You can put some threads maybe if you wanted to for a particular thing that you wanted their support or help with. You could get some thread. You could spin some thread. You could buy some thread. You could cut a piece, and place it on your altar to say, yes, this is something that I would like to learn through, work through. And then you can start a process of, it's prayer really, I'm going to be honest, it's prayer really. It's a prayer or a conversation, a sacred conversation is the way that you could look at it with your Nornir, your personal Nornir. You could say, help me learn from this. What is it that I need to learn? Help me learn from this. Or help me live through this. Help me live through this. Or help me be the conduit that heals this. Now, lots of ways in which you can ask for their support. Now, your Nornir, your personal Nornir, who, we don't know how many of them there are. We know there's lots. I should also say, which I didn't say at the beginning, that the big Nornir are said to be giantesses. They're said to be like very, very ancient giantesses. The lesser Nornir could be from any of the different, they could be elves, they could be dwarves, they could be humans, anything. I often think that they're actually chosen. Like the Valkyrie come and choose. They say, you're somebody who's invested in everything going right in the at the end of the day, and in allowing fate to flow properly. And they'll say, come and be a member of the Nornir. I think that's a possibility. So you might have any number of Nornir. We don't know how many Nornir each person has, but you can just call to your Nornir. And you can have that conversation with them. And that's an exercise of faith. Some of you might experience them whispering back to you. That's a possibility. Or they might communicate with you through runes. You could do a rune reading for them as well. And I'll talk about that in a moment. You could look for their influence outside of yourself. I was saying how sometimes people can act as the Disir in your life for you. They can embody that Disir energy. Sometimes someone can come and be the emissary or the messenger of the Nornir in the same way. So you can speak to them, consult with them, ask them. I think of the Nornir as wanting to, what's the word I'm looking for? To maintain the flow of fate through existence. The intention of the all, whatever it is, to experience life to its fullest. And to support each of us in doing that without breaking. Sort of thing that they do both. They're like, we want this person to experience the life to its fullest, and for them to be able to do the things that they've committed to, and to be an expression of fate flowing through the universe. But we don't want them to break. So I think that they do that as well. So we can call on them and ask for support. Because the Nornir draw runes on the world tree, they carve the runes on the world tree, and they ask for, we ask for support. They write fate, onto the world tree. You can work with your runes. The runes are really, really good oracles for the Nornir. So you can do a rune of the day. You can say, what rune will be my guide through these challenges? What rune will help me see the challenge or see the opportunity that I need right now, the fate-driven opportunity or the fate-driven challenge. So you can work with your runes. They're really, really good collaborators with the Nornir. And of course, you can also work with your birth runes. If you know what your Nornir's gift is, which is your birth hour, it's the hour in which you were born, then you can work with that rune as well. Now, there are two ways in which, if you want to come and you wanted to do a bit more exploratory work, you feel like, yes, I really need to work with a Nornir on this, that you can come and work with me to experience the influence of the Nornir. So one is obviously having your birth runes calculated for you, and having your report, and having your one-to-one with me. You get your sun rune package as well, with its power song and all of those things. That's the birth runes oracle, which you can find in my shop. And the other is if you know that actually I want to do some really deep healing, and you want to include the Nornir within that. Maybe you want to do some past life regression work, or you want to do some ancestral clearing work. I do day one-to-one private sessions with people, normally in person, but sometimes we can do it online as well, to do some of that really deep clearing and really deep connection with the Nornir. Now, I'm going to remind you at this point the question that I asked you at the beginning of the session. So I asked you, do you experience fate as being positive or negative or neutral? And my personal viewpoint is that we are all parts of the all, of like a divine consciousness that we can't even connect with or to. It's so big, that had chosen to experience existence to its fullest in order to receive all of the wisdom and the gifts and the blessings, like every possibility to explore itself in that way through incarnated being. You know? And that in order to do that, it has to have the full range of negative and positive experiences. It might not even view those things as being negative or positive, but the full range of experiences need to be available to it. And that the Nornir work to ensure that is the case, and that each of us is an expression of that divine conscious energy having that experience in the universe. And that the Nornir, that's their first job, and their second job is to support each of us through that process, recognising that sometimes we'll be in moments of divine ecstasy, or sometimes we might not have got to that place of divine ecstasy, in which case they're going to try and help us to reach that place of divine ecstasy, that they're going to try and ensure that there is a balance, you know, that it's not too much or too little, whilst recognising that the fullness of being means that it can't be like, fate can't be like a pie that we divide into two equal bits and then everyone gets one half and the other half, because that isn't the full experience of existence. You know, sometimes we're going to have really like challenger lifetimes, and other times we're not. You know, so that is my view, is that they have two jobs, and that perhaps the big three Nornir are there sort of saying, you know, we're overseeing that, we're making sure that's happening, and then the little Nornir are going out into the world and saying, okay, this person's going to have this experience and this one wants to have this gift, and what they do with that is outside of their hands. You know, we're in charge of the way we navigate that experience. You know, they can't do that for us. They can be there and they can support, and they can say, oh, Maggie said that she was going to commit to this intention, we're going to put something in her path again to help her to do that, but she has to choose whether she picks it up or not most of the time. You know, so we're still in charge to that extent, is my belief. I don't think of fate as being something that means that we're stuck. No, the Nornir put opportunities in our paths, or, you know, sometimes we fall into a big hole that they put in the road, let's be honest, but we still get to choose what we do once we fall into the hole. So, I'm not sure that there are any other questions in the chat box, but if you have any other questions, let me know. Have you worked with the Nornir before? Have you worked have you worked with the big Nornir before? Have you worked with a small Nornir before? What makes you go, oh, you know, I'd really like to work with the Nornir? Any questions that you've got, let me know. Michelle, I'm saying, just reviewing the chat at this point. So Michelle's saying, definitely love to connect with purpose. Yeah. It's funny though, isn't it, that, if I come into this group, people will be like, yes, I absolutely want to connect with purpose. And other people are like, no, I'm just really not that bothered. I just want to get a big TV and a large car and I'll be okay. Purpose, I'll leave that until the next lifetime. Sometimes I forget that not everybody does. So, you're probably my people, if you're like, yes, I'm happy to take on purpose. My shield is ready. My tool is ready. Whatever it is, I want that purpose. But not everybody does. So if you do, well, congratulations is what I say. Suki says, Rue the Fairy recently watched a young friend, 9, in a play. The good fairy was called Fairy Liquid and clutched a bottle of Fairy Liquid. Think I would have liked that fairy in my life. Man, maybe she's going to come do the washing up for us. I don't feel that washing up should be part of my life purpose. I'm going to be honest with you. Even though I try really hard to make it as pleasurable an experience as possible, I don't enjoy it. But the good fairy was called Fairy Liquid. Yeah, well, practical. And I think that's important. The Nornir are, they are practical above all else. I don't think that they're always going to approve of the gifts that were in the fairy tale, in the version of Sleeping Beauty that I was read as a child, where it was all sort of like fluffy gifts. No, we want gifts that are going to support us in pursuing our purpose, even if that involves doing the washing up. Thank you, Suki. Anything else? Does anybody else get any other questions? Otherwise, we will finish this session. I am looking forward to seeing those of you who are coming to the Embodied Runes tomorrow. It's going to be a lovely, lovely masterclass in working with the runes, energetically, working with the voice and the body and do some journeying work with them. It is going to be fabulous. So it looks as if you have all finished your questions. So thank you so much for joining me. I hope that this has given you some inspiration and some practical steps for working with your Nornir, whether you've done them, whether you've worked with them before, or this is the first time that you've been thinking about them. And please do, if you do have any other questions, comments, reach out and let me know. Lovely to see you all.